The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. We are into day one of Big Ten Media Days at Hail Varsity. We're powered by Cornhead Lager, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, live inside Lucas Oil Stadium for the afternoon affair. Elijah, good to spend some time with you and all the folks in the stream.
Schmitty, you just missed out on what I can only call the most adventurous opening to a show that I have ever had to endure. It's as you were sitting down. I don't think you had the earbuds in just yet. The old mouse here decided to get the click button stuck, and it decided to click while my mic was on. Everything on the sound or on the hot button board, essentially. So we had like 3 or 4 different sounds going at once. I was in the background going, no. So I hope everyone at home enjoyed that intro to this show.
So the computer went Tourette's is what happened.
By the time that we get this in podcast form, I'm going to have it cleaned up, so you may have missed it if you're at home. But if you got to catch it live, enjoy that while it lasted, because that was an adventure.
Pretty good. We'll have our friends from Hurrdat Sports here tomorrow as Ravi, Damon, Avery, Sasha making the roadie for Husker Day tomorrow. We'll be back in tomorrow morning and afternoon as well with Hail Varsity. 489-1240 to get in. 800-825-5865. Can email Chris at hailvarsity.com and find us on Twitter at HVarsityRadio. Can check the show out that way. Hail Varsity YouTube, like and subscribe. And we'll have plenty to get to day one of Big Ten Media Days. We'll dive in on David Sanders Jr. What's the latest with Nebraska recruiting? Where are they at? As they made the Final Four, yes, but there is a push by those Final Four to get Mr. Sanders on campus before August 17th and that deadline. So we'll hit that here in a moment. Nebraska will be featured and focused on tomorrow. Today, Illinois, Northwestern, the Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, Wisconsin. We'll just tell you what was real. And what was real today, it was very sparse when it comes to players making their way to Radio Row. Got some nods, got some waves, but it's okay. We made up for it with some just incredible folks. Jack Ebling going to be with us to talk some college football. Tim May, Mr. Ohio State football, also checks in. Uncle Gerry is back. Coach Gerry DiNardo from BTN with us on the show. We'll also have a chance to possibly hear from Bruce Feldman with The Athletic and, of course, Fox Sports. I don't know where you'll slot that one in, Elijah. Who am I missing?
And just in terms of all the interviews we got today?
Yes.
Well, we got more than I think we'll be able to get in one day. Tim May, Scott Docterman, Jack Ebling, Ian Fitzsimmons.
Yes, my good Lord. Ian Fitzsimmons of ESPN and NFL fame, radio, TV, SEC, and Big Ten. He's awesome. We had so much fun with Ian Fitzsimmons. Hot dogs and football, right? I mean, that's what we're into. Excited tonight because, yes, it is Spicy Shrimp Tuesday, which means Schmidt is going to cry at St. Elmo's. It is spicy shrimp cocktail sauce time in about 2 hours and filet time. So that is very real. Excited about that. Coach Brandon was in at 3:15 Central Time. We echo what he says. Hit that like button before you comment. Uncle Jimmy is in. Says, let's go, Chris and Elijah. Broderick checks in. Broderick, good to have you. Broderick says, hopefully the afternoon better than the way the morning started for you. We are set to go. I am on the list. I'm on multiple lists. The naughty and nice list usually, but we're on the nice list this tomorrow morning. So I should not have to paratroop in. to get into Lucas Oil Stadium. Part of the Boulder Peace Treaty is Jeff Snitley. He's in. Good to have you. Crew in. Patrick is here. Jeff checks it along with Justin and KG. The other Dave is great. Ryan Day, is he on the hot seat? Don't kid yourself. You lose to Michigan 4 years in a row. It is Joe Pesci time in Goodfellas. That's the feel we have from so many folks close to that Ohio State program. We'll talk to Tim May about it. The ACC, Real Matthew, nails it, brought 19 quarterbacks. The Big Ten bringing 5. Yep, Sammy McEwen had a great story on that. We tell you to read. Washington brings back 3 total players from their 2 deep. Michael is here. Tuck is here. Brent is in. Anonymous, good to have you. Checking in. The other Elijah, eat beef. Steve is in from Houston. Jack says, what a beautiful day in Denver. Crazy Spider Adventures is also in. We'll get more shout-outs. NASCAR Eric says, what's up? As does Anthony and Ryan. So we went well beyond 5, but it's a big day. It's Big Ten Media Days, day 1. So, Elijah, without further ado, let's get some Croton talk going. And this is from Mr. Wiltfong of On 3. He's on 3 now, right? Not 24/7. Mr. Yes. Wiltfong's been a guest of the firm before in his 24/7 days. Good dude, really good insider. What is the word on David Sanders Jr.?
I had an article a couple of weeks ago that said he may take some visits this week. We talked to his mom. They were looking at the calendar, looking at some logistics, looking at itineraries to see if they could get on the road, if there's a school that could get that final look for David ahead of his August commitment date. And it would be huge for Nebraska to get him back to campus. They're going to have some top young 2026s on campus like Brandon Arrington. They're trying to close linebackers like Will Hawthorne and Christian Jones. But David Sanders, he's the super big fish out there. We watched them rally and flip legacy recruit Dylan Raiola at the end of that 2024 cycle. That helped put them in the mix for David Sanders this cycle. He said as much. That was an eye-opener for him to see Raiola flip from Georgia to Nebraska. They got him on campus for an official visit Mother's Day weekend. That was his only time in Lincoln, but they loved the vibe and atmosphere around Matt Rule's programs, his track record of turning programs around, the fan support from Nebraska, second to none. If Nebraska can get him to campus this weekend, I think that they're having good dialogue, good conversations with the family behind the scenes. If they could get him on campus again this weekend, I don't think any of the other contenders are sleeping on Nebraska. When you're talking about Ohio State folks, you're talking about Tennessee sources, Georgia's the 4th finalist, but no one, I think people are viewing Nebraska as a real contender here with a few weeks to go in the David Sanders sweepstakes.
Listen, this is Matt Rule. This is Nebraska promise that turns into productivity with a good 2024. The obvious reason, if you're a big Red fan, is you want to go and be relevant in college football in the postseason. You want to beat some teams you're, air quote, supposed to beat as a blue blood or a brand. You want to go play and compete and maybe win 1 or 2 or more big games, because God knows your television draw still makes the Big Ten smile. All of those things happen, and that moves the program forward. It gets you out from the doldrums of the past and regret and last 7 years. All of that is moving towards the goal line in a great way if you're a big Red fan. That being said, it also does some things for your future. One, to get Dylan to flip and come want to resurrect this thing is huge. And again, he's got to go win the job, and Nebraska's got to play well on offense. I mean, right? Do the yada 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 with me. All that being said, you get a guy like that to flip like you did. It makes other high-profile guys think about flipping. They want to be teammates with a guy like Dylan Raiola. Dylan Raiola is going to make sure he's FaceTiming or texting or doing whatever to get more talent into the program. It only behooves him and the team to get more guys in here, and he'll recruit his butt off as a peer. That's a good thing. And if you show progress with high-end talent it'll attract future high-end ball players, especially if you end on the right side of the scoreboard, Elijah, in some of those big moment games like Colorado, like an end-of-season showdown under the lights at Kinnick, like that showcase if you walk in unbeaten against Ohio State. But let's not sleep on Rutgers. As big as Ohio State was today, Rutgers and Schiano, brother, they got me worried. They got me worried about that maybe being Nebraska's first loss if they handle Colorado.
Yeah, but back to Sanders here really fast, because I want to dive into what Wiltfong just said a little bit. It's that leap of faith that would be required to go to Nebraska that still has me doubting whether the staff can pull it off. Because I think they've sold the family, just reading in between the lines with what Wiltfong said there. He said he talked to his mom, said there's conversations between the staff and family. They like what Nebraska has to offer. I think Sanders loves the idea of going off and playing with Dylan Raiola. I think those are two guys that have probably dreamed of playing together for a while. But at the end of the day, as you kind of mentioned, you haven't seen the progress just yet. You saw it year one. You saw maybe some signs of hope. But in terms of seeing progress, you're still yet to see it, where we're talking a bowl game. We're talking Nebraska back into national relevancy. You haven't seen that just yet. So your family can be sold. You can love the idea of playing with Dylan Raiola, but it's not a leap of faith to go and play for Georgia, to go and play for Ohio State, to go to the programs that have developed offensive linemen, have put offensive linemen in the league, have had first-round offensive line draft picks in the last couple of years. That is still an option that you look at. I guess you could throw Tennessee in there as well. An option that you look at and you say, wow, there's no leap of faith involved there. You know what you're going to get. You go off to those three places, they're going to take care of you. If you put in the work, they're going to turn you into a draft pick, barring injuries. You look at Nebraska, though, it's been a place, I've said it before, where high-level careers have gone to die over the past decade or so. You go to Nebraska, at least over the past decade, if you're a high-level recruit, a four-star kid, you're not going to get developed the way you should. You're not going to win many football games, and you're not going to get drafted the place, the round that you dream of whenever you leave high school. That's what the rep is on Nebraska right now. It's going to take time to change that. So that's why I sit back and I go, the family can love Nebraska. He can love the idea of playing with Dylan, and it's still a really, really hard choice if you put the Nebraska hat on whenever you have that little signing ceremony. Still a tough decision to go out there and make. So the ball's in Nebraska's courts in terms of selling hope. It's a lot easier to sell results as opposed to selling hope, and that's what Nebraska's doing right now. But more power to Nebraska for being in that top four, being there, and by all accounts, it sounds like selling the family on what Nebraska has to offer. You just got to sell that final little piece of, you know what, this is not going to be a place where your career goes to die.
Be part of that hope, right? Be a change agent if you're a high-level recruit that wants to block for what we feel can be a really, really good quarterback, a quarterback that Nebraska's not had in the program from a pro-style standpoint, right? Zach Taylor's your best pro-style quarterback in recent memory, and from an NFL standpoint, you got to go back to the amazing Vince Ferragamo or Dave Humm. That's 50 years ago. So there is Nebraska working hard on the trail. Nebraska will work hard in front of the microphones and cameras tomorrow with Nebraska Day tomorrow. USC, UCLA also part of it, as well as Iowa. Let's talk villains for a moment, because Ryan Day and Ohio State, they're not real likable for many in the Big Ten. I respect the hell out of him. I respect Chip Kelly. It's weird to leave a head job, but go be a coordinator. And again, $2 million says a lot of things, but I applaud Kelly for wanting to be happy. I don't applaud Kelly for ditching his kids he recruited, but that's neither here nor there. So if we talk villain, I can still circle Michigan as the villain based on the remnants. They're the defending champs. And if they keep winning despite no Harbaugh, since the villain left, his organization, if they keep doing their thing, is still going to be the villain for 2024 for me in the Big Ten.
How about Oregon coming into the league? Dan Lanning.
I like Lanning a lot, but Uncle Phil and Nike. I mean, you could have Daddy Warbucks, Uncle Phil handing out checks.
Well, think back. Remember Dan Lanning's pregame speech against Colorado?
Dude, he was right. I love that.
He was right, but imagine if it's the pregame speech you're hearing from Dan Lanning and it's your favorite team that he's talking about as opposed to Colorado. I think it could go the other way with you. Like, man, screw this guy.
I don't think he'd say that about anybody else.
motivation's a hell of a drug, Schmidt. Sometimes you got to say what you got to say before a game.
Thank you, Rick James.
Sometimes you got to say what you got to say before a game. And don't get me wrong, I like Dan Lanning. I could see if he's a guy you have to play year in, year out, that not only are they kicking your butt, but they're doing it with Phil Knight Nike money. I could see them very quickly becoming a villain in the Big Ten and being like, big bad Oregon's coming to town with all their money bags and their head coach that just wants to badmouth you before the game to the team. Like, I don't know. I could see Oregon becoming the new villain of the Big Ten with Harbaugh and Michigan out the door.
Eric chimes in on the stream. Like and subscribe. Hail Varsity YouTube. I think the Stallions doc on Netflix will make him even more of a villain. Uday, is that right? I don't know. But
that's a pretty unpronounceable username right there.
Thank you. Yeah, it's all going to change for the better for NU. Clay is on it. Spicy shrimp. Yes, the legendary shrimp cocktail. I'm taking a picture for Jaybird Erickson and Jeff Erickson. It is legendary. Ian Fitzsimmons will weigh in on barbecue and football. Hail Varsity continues live at Big Ten Media Days with Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager.
Hail Varsity Radio is live. Now, back to Schmitty.
Schmitty's a great guy, but he don't have a brain.
And Elijah.
You want me to speak? We're not pointing you yet.
On Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it, Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager, live here at Big Ten Media Days. Ian Fitzsimmons with us of ESPN. NFL.
Hold on a minute. What was that lager?
Cornhead Lager.
Hell yeah.
Do we need to send you some?
Describe Cornhead Lager.
It's a light, beautiful part of summer, fall, and winter.
I'm in.
Done.
I really don't even drink anymore. Just the name alone. I was like, whoa, hold on. That was an attention getter right there.
Cornhead Lager by our friends at 1890 Nebraska's Collective.
Come on. Hell yeah.
You need a burger, you need a brat, you need a Cornhead Lager.
And and when it comes to the brat, now we're getting deep here at Big Ten Media Days. Do you ever put ketchup on a brat?
I've got a friend that you're staring at the screen at that puts nacho cheese.
Whoa.
That is nauseating, dude. Are you serious?
Nacho cheese goes on the hot dogs. Brats, no. Brats, okay. It's simple. With brats, you're going to get yourself some onions. You're going to really saute them up in some butter. Throw your brats in with some beer and let it all cook down into one nice sauce that comes in the bottom of the pan. You don't even need any condiments for a beer brat done right.
Yeah, you should go ahead and sue for defamation because that is completely a different thing. But if I even see somebody,
fumble. I'm sorry.
Yeah, if I even see somebody put ketchup on a brat, that's. I mean, we might have to throw hands.
Where are you at on relish?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sauerkraut.
I'm not a big kraut guy, but I'm okay with it. Jalapenos, spicy mustard, brown mustard, that's ketchup. No, or on a hot dog.
But the total exclamation point is that Cornhead Lager.
Yes, that's it, man. I can taste it right now. Let's go.
Let's get the grill going is what we should do. Ian, I've enjoyed listening and watching you for years, man. Thanks for popping by.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
What a year it could be, it may be, for the Big Ten on the heels of a national championship. What's this expansion mean to you?
We got to get used to it, and we will. A lot of people are already complaining about, coast to coast and, Oregon traveling to Columbus, Ohio, right? Or, USC having to go to Rutgers, or whatever it may be. I mean, we'll get used to it. We always do. We're used to Arkansas and South Carolina being in the SEC. Nebraska's moved twice, right? I mean, now we're used to them being in the Big Ten. And there's people listening right now that don't remember that Penn State was an independent.
Forever.
Yeah.
Them and the Canes.
So, and the last one standing, Notre Dame. But we get used to it. So this new era of college football, we'll get used to Texas and Oklahoma being in the SEC. We'll get used to Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC being in the Big Ten for however long that lasts. Because I think, in 5 or 6 years from now, we're going to end up with a new Division I, if this makes sense, with 62 to 70 teams, whatever it may be, and that's your new D1. They're going to break away from the NCAA because the NCAA doesn't have any control of the college football playoff anyway. Zero. A lot of people, even diehard college football fans, don't realize that the NCAA has no control over who's playing, where, when, what time. what the matchup is for the college football playoff. So they'll break away, and we'll get used to that. And then you'll have, I don't know, I don't want to pick on Tulsa, but it was one that came to mind, or even a Tulane, right? Mm-hmm. Just beat USC in a bowl game a couple years ago. Well, guess what? They will be in that new Division I AA, schools like that, and they'll go compete for a title. And my message to them would be, look at North Dakota State. You don't see them complaining. They just come in and whip your ass, right? And
they love phone booth football.
And they're counting titles. So that's the future. This is the new era now, and there'll be another one coming within a decade. And guess what? We'll get used to that also.
Ian Fitzsimmons with us, Hail Varsity Radio. Ian, let's talk Nebraska. Your thoughts on Matt Rule as you've seen the world of college football. You've seen his stops. Nebraska's one of those schools that we've enjoyed covering for years. They need to get back on the winning track.
College football is a better world when schools like Nebraska, Bama, we need Miami to get back. I don't know how they're going to do that, but it's a better world when those traditional programs are all outstanding. Ohio State is right now, obviously Bama, Georgia, all those logo schools, for lack of a better term. Nebraska is a damn logo school, and we need them to get back. And Matt Rule, full disclaimer, I've known him a long time, and that dude just finds ways to win. And it didn't work out in Carolina. Some guys just aren't a fit for the NFL. Nick Saban didn't fit in the NFL. Now, he may have if he would have gotten his wish and had Drew Brees over Dante Culpepper. Imagine that whole world and what could have changed, right?
Medical review.
Exactly right. But that's one where you look at Nebraska. Matt has won wherever he's been, and he'll continue to. And I love what he's done in the portal, and that dude can coach him up. And getting Nebraska royalty to come home, and Dylan Raiola, my brother, coached Dom for 6 years in Detroit. My brother's a special teams coach now with the Seattle Seahawks. Loves that whole family. Donovan's a great O-line coach, but getting Dylan to go, say, no thanks, Georgia, and come to Nebraska, that was one of the biggest coups of the offseason. And I don't know if he's going to start as a freshman. I have no earthly idea. Should, right? So, he's got the talent. And he's got that DNA of I will just come in and whip your butt. And he's got the body, the mind for it. So for Matt to get him to flip and come home, Don Raiola told me a story at it was at the Natty last year, the Georgia TCU debacle, and his daughter played volleyball at TCU. So we were talking about Dylan, and we were having lunch, and Dylan's sitting there. And I said, if he doesn't go to Nebraska, he goes, well, right now, he ain't going to Nebraska. And I said, how many letters of your name are they going to take out of that Ring of Honor?
He's on the wall. He's on the wall with a lot of dudes.
I think they're going to start like, the D is gone, and the M, the O, and then the M, right? And all you need to see is Raiola up there. It's going to be a slow process. But guess what? Dylan ends up there, and you hate to put savior of a program on one player, but I think the combination of finally having the quarterback and the head coach is going to go a long way.
Ian, with Rule and with Raiola, I know you picked last week at SEC Media Days Texas A&M as your sleeper team in the SEC. Where does Nebraska rank among your sleeper teams for the Big Ten?
Very similar. Very similar to A&M. I think that a lot of people at SEC Media Days were looking at A&M and Oklahoma, for that matter, as a 7-win type team. I think they're both better than that. I think that 8-4 is palatable for the Sooners. I think 9 wins is more along the lines for Texas A&M. They got some big dudes up front. Colin Klein coming in as the OC is going to do wonders, I think, for Connor Wegman, a quarterback at A&M. Just like Matt Rule he's a wizard, man. He is, and he's got a great coaching staff. I think they're deeper. They have hit certain spots of need in the portal. Mm-hmm. And that's, by the way, Mike Norvell, that's exactly what Norvell did to turn Florida State around. He didn't revamp the whole roster. He still recruited like a madman, but he used like Keon Coleman from Michigan State. Right. That was a need to go opposite Johnny Wilson, right? So I think that is something that Rule and his staff have also done. I think Nebraska is an 8 to 9 win type football team, just like the Aggies.
Schedule-wise for Nebraska, it's not as bad as it's been in past years. You have to go to Columbus. You have to go to Iowa City. You have to go to SC. But you could start out 7-0. Caveat being Colorado is still explosive. and then Rutgers is going to mess you up. They're going to try and mess you up.
Yep.
So how do you handle success once you taste it? Because they haven't.
Well, and that goes back to the guy you just asked me about, because they didn't have a lot of success at Baylor, in the post-Art Briles era. I mean, think about this. The guy we're talking about, you know what his first recruiting class was? 5 kids.
Right after the
Briles deal.
Yeah.
5. 2 years later, he's playing for a Big 12 championship. Year 3 for Matt Rule, if you go back and look at it, right? At Temple, at Baylor, and now at Nebraska, that's when he really starts to get things going. So I'm a big believer in Matt Rule. I'd send my kids to play for him in a heartbeat. And I really believe they're going to find ways to win more games than a lot of people think, and that's going to be glorious for college football.
The close losses extend beyond Rule. And we're talking chasing threes, the name of their offseason,
right.
Kind of hard knocks. They went 0 for November on last-second losses. Red zone turnovers.
And you learn from that.
You do.
You get calloused, and you get angry.
Mm-hmm.
So everything you just mentioned, you don't think he's using that in the entire offseason? One more rep. Give me another minute in film study. Give me one more lap. Give me one more push-up. I mean, that's how you finish games. You become calloused. You learn from it, and you don't want that feeling again, for lack of a better term. So, again, I think Nebraska is a lot better than a lot of people think. I'm glad you brought up A&M because that's one of them.
Chris Ward popping by.
You got royalty here, man. Let me get the heck off. Let me get this headset over, man. Are you kidding me?
No.
It's a damn legend walking up here.
I don't know this dude. He's good.
4 different seasons, 3 different time zones.
He looks tired.
And you just got to spend time with Jack.
I got to go talk to Bill anyway. Yep. Good to see you, man.
Ian, thank you. Ian Fitzsimmons giving us a few minutes here talking Nebraska college football. Hail Varsity Radio here at Radio Row, Lucas Oil Stadium, Day 1, Iowa, Nebraska, SC, UCLA tomorrow. But Ian Fitzsimmons, man, just an entertainer, insightful, good dude. Friend of our pal Lars Anderson. We may sneak in Bruce Feldman, our chat with him, and Scott Docterman tomorrow. So that's on the way. Jack Ebling coming up, Mr. Michigan State football. And he will also partake in the spicy shrimp tonight.
Yeah,
he's
maybe
shaking his head no bleeping way.
Maybe that's our over/under for the steak and a beer bet tonight. Is how many spicy shrimp does Schmidt consume at dinner tonight?
I'm gonna have 2.
You got to put a half in there somewhere. Over under 2.5.
I do a half. You and Carol are doing the morning show by yourself. Pretty good. Reminder to get buckled up. We'll get some more of your comments here in the stream. Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe. Follow and tweet on Twitter as well at HVarsity Radio. Find Elijah at Herbal Essence at Schmidt_radio. But get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives. It prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it click. This message brought to you by the NDOT Highway Safety Office. So our chat with Jack Ebling on the way. More Nebraska-centered thoughts. Also the grand scope of the Big Ten. Coach DiNardo kicks off hour 2, and then plenty of Ohio State and Nebraska thoughts with the great Tim May. So day 1, very eventful, and we are all about it. Hail Varsity rolls forward here. We're about the 35-yard line, Lucas Oil Stadium, and we're powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, Hail Varsity, here at Lucas Oil Stadium. Chris Schmidt and host of The Drive, Jack Ebling, with us as Jack was able to paratroop down from the ceiling and find his way to the 25-yard line. We are kicking off day 1 of Big Ten Media Days. Elijah Herbel rolling his sleeves up back in our studios. We're presented by Cornhead Lager. Jack, I don't know that I didn't bring any Cornhead Lager. I should have.
That would have been good.
But you know what? We're here, and it's football season, man. Good to see you.
Are you allowed to drink sponsors' products on your show?
Depending on the day, Elijah, we're required to drink sponsors' product.
This would be a good day to test it.
I think it would be. It's been an interesting day, but as we talked Big Ten, Jack, man, what an intriguing year, and it's going to be that Cold War between the Big Ten and the SEC.
Yeah,
right?
The Big 18. I was just noticing from the logo, if they just extend that line on the G a little more, it looks like an 8. They could do it.
Someday, Elijah, how's your graphic work?
Not great. Not great. My Photoshop abilities are novice at best, but that is still better than most of the population. That being said, you don't want to employ me for that kind of work. That's not my strong suit. I'll stick to being behind the board and behind a mic.
Jack Ebling with us, The Drive, his show, world-renowned author and radio man, multiple times sportscaster and sports writer of the year. He has got the Chicago Bulls number next to his name with that, 6. Jack, I want to dive into the Big Ten race here. Cleveland.com has their poll out. It's Ohio State.
Yeah.
With their spending, that should be accurate.
Yes.
But who do you like as a surprise? Let's go to that. Oh, wow, what a good year X, Y, or Z had this year. Who do you like this year in the Big Ten to kind of maybe wow?
And there is a correct answer here.
No, and it doesn't have to be a team in red.
Well, I think it could be a team in red. I haven't seen Dylan Raiola yet. But if he's what we think or what I've heard, could be. I sure like Matt Rule.
Yeah.
And if Raiola can come in and do some things, Nebraska's on the climb. There's no question about that. Question is, how fast? Mm-hmm. And I think it's eventually going to get where a lot of Nebraska fans hope. Probably not 3 national championships in the span of 4 years. But I would say that Nebraska is going to be a national player very soon.
People right now are rising and applauding Jack Ebling with that prognostication for Nebraska football. And I think Jack's given a thumbs up here, Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can watch this. But the climb is agreed. How fast is that part of the equation, Elijah? But I think with some breaks, it could be. If you have an average offense, that climb accelerates.
Yes, exactly. And I think there's no question the culture for Nebraska, the fans never left. And for a lot of programs who go through that long a period of frustration, you got to start over. Mm-hmm. Nebraska doesn't have to do that. It's just got to rekindle and find the magic. So, it's there. They don't have to do a build the way, say, in Illinois or a lot of other teams would have to do. Michigan State, starting over again.
What's their build like? You're 4 years removed from 11-2.
Yeah, that was 2021. The interesting thing, on our television show Sunday night, we had linebacker Darius Snow, Eric's son and Percy's nephew, and we realized that Michigan State is the only school with 2 wins over Michigan in this decade, in the 2020s, and the last team to beat Michigan. But all anyone remembers in East Lansing is 49-0 last year.
Sure.
And Michigan State had a chance not to play that game. They were offered that choice after the sign-stealing scandal. Alan Haller said, we gotta play it. And they did, sort of. At least they watched it. I don't know how they played it. But had they said, we're not going to play this game, it would have put all the focus on what happened, and with that big television hole to fill, it would have been a story unlike any that the Big Ten investigators or NCAA could or wanted to discover. And so now we got a Netflix special on Connor Stallions, his story. He's going to set the narrative, and then anything comes out afterward will be Page 8 news.
Well, good old Netflix, Elijah. Deep pockets, Jack.
Well, and Jack, as you turn the page now to a new season for Michigan State, what do you think the task is for Jonathan Smith here in year one? For Matt Rule, it was incremental progress last year. Show us that there is a plan in place and that you're executing that plan. What's the goal and expectation for Jonathan Smith in year one at Michigan State?
No shortcuts, no tricks, no hocus pocus. He's done this before. If you can win in Corvallis, you can probably win anywhere. When he took over that job, it was considered the worst in Power 5, Power 4 now. But when you look at what he was able to do there, I think most people around the country would tell you he is one of the better football coaches you're going to find. The question is recruiting. Now, Mark D'Antonio, with a lot of 3-stars, was able to have 5 seasons with 11, 12, or 13 wins in the span of 6 years. Different quarterbacks. I don't know. That's probably a little luck involved with that.
Le'Veon was great.
Le'Veon was great. Darquez Denard.
No fly zone was money.
He had some guys in there who certainly knew how to get it done and went on and played at the next level. But I would say for Michigan State, job one is to make a bowl game. And last year, as bad as things were, and they were horrible, got outscored by their 3 major opponents, 129-3. They could have won 6 games. They won 4. Oh, you remember the Nebraska game, how crazy that was.
Yeah, there's still a review that needs to be corrected with an end zone catch.
Right. So there were 2 other games.
Kind of like a sideline pass in 2015.
Yes, that's right. That was the payback for that, yeah. But when you think about Michigan State losing back-to-back games that they had in the bag, at Iowa and at Rutgers, they led Rutgers 24-6.
Remember that?
Yeah, and then a punt goes by the kicker's head. He didn't see it. Snap goes by him, and then the game against Iowa, they just ran into a tremendous player in the secondary and kick returner, and next thing you know, they were on the wrong end of that one. So they finished 4-8 instead of 6-6. And as I'm sure Nebraska fans know, when you don't go to a bowl game, it's pretty sour.
It's Jack Ebling with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, sitting down with Schmidt out at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis for Big Ten Media Days. And Jack, as you talk head coaches here, I mean, with Jonathan Smith, what's nice about year one of a rebuild is internally the pressure may be high because it's how you set your foundation for the future of your rebuild. Yeah. But externally the pressure is a little bit lower, with fans understanding that sometimes it takes a little bit of a tearing up process to get things right. 2 coaches, though, that do have some external pressure and expectations on him this year in the Big Ten, James Franklin and Ryan Day. With Penn State and James Franklin, they've been great. They've been 10-2 good just about every single year, but fans want that breakthrough into the college football playoff to kind of jump onto the national stage. As for Ryan Day, it's been a poor stretch against Michigan where, you know what, you can have a fantastic year, but if you're not beating Michigan, everyone's going to be saying from the outside, you're not living up to expectations. I want you to look at those 2 coaches and tell me who you think is under more pressure in this 2024 season to succeed now and have some success, make it to a college football playoff and win a couple games there.
Well, go ahead. If you're talking about winning it all, which is the goal at Ohio State, that's not much margin for error. Ohio State ranked number 1 in the Big Ten in just about every poll and number 2 in the country and most now behind Georgia. I would be surprised if Ohio State doesn't win the Big Ten and get to the national semifinal. Now, that means you got to beat Michigan. And if you lose to Michigan, I don't know what else matters. Now, that would be 4 years in a row. And when you consider that Michigan's only beaten Ohio State 5 times in this century, including the last 3.
Jeez.
So you're talking about Ohio State winning 17 times, Michigan winning 5. 1 game Michigan backed out of because of COVID. And then, you've got so much dominance by Ohio State, but all anyone remembers are those last 3 matchups with the Wolverines.
What do you think of Sherrone Moore? I mean, is this a guy that's as good as David Shaw and can sustain despite what they lost, and they lost a ton, but they're not going to fall off a cliff, or do you expect needing to order parachutes?
No, I don't think they're going to need to order parachutes because they have too many good players still, and they're recruiting very well. They weren't, but now they've really picked up in the last few weeks. So I think they're going to have enough talent to get it done. David Shaw, that's a pretty heavy lift. David Braun would be a heavy lift. Mm-hmm. But coming in year one, he did get to coach 4 games last year. Mm-hmm. And, he's had a chance to be a head coach on a part-time level there. It's not like he's walking into a place he's never been. So I expect Michigan to be good. I don't know about the quarterbacking. I think you can flip a coin between Michigan and Penn State for third.
Okay.
I would say Ohio State is 1. Oregon is 2. And then after that, you get into those 2. And who knows what Iowa's going to be. If Cade McNamara stays healthy, could be. They've
got a guy and a coordinator now, Jack, that's actually developed quarterbacks. So
yeah. His name isn't Ferentz?
No, it's not. It's a quarterback coach, not a center.
Yeah. Yeah.
So to me, Iowa, they're a lot like Nebraska. You get anything that's above suck, you'll be okay on offense.
Yeah, so I think Iowa is one of those teams that depends on what Gerry DiNardo calls the matchup games.
Yeah.
Where you're basically the same, and you'd win 5, and the other team would win 5 if you played 10 times. And how do those come out? So I would put them in the third tier after the top 2 and then the next 2. But I think there are a lot of teams here that are still capable of beating you on a given day. They're not capable of winning it. But if you're not paying attention, you can get stung.
I think Rutgers is one of those.
Yeah.
I think Nebraska is one of those.
Yes.
I think Wisconsin's one of those. And it's going to be a lot of fun, Jack, this year because you've got so many helmet games and you're going to have your traditional, we got to bring it every week in the Big Ten. You didn't always have to do that in the Big Ten. You didn't always have to do that in the Big 12. You didn't always have to do that in the Pac-12. Last year got you ready because that was a great conference to go out with an exclamation point. Quarterback-wise, you've got Gabriel that comes in. I like Aller going into his 3rd year.
Yeah.
And really, who else am I missing? A quarterback. You like Childs at all for Sparty?
Childs is pretty exciting. He's electric when you see him. If he can stay healthy, and when you have Michigan State's offensive line, that's always a question. But he's going to make big plays. He reminds me a little bit of Terrell Pryor.
Nice call.
And I think he's the kind of guy who can maybe win a game for you, but he's not going to win them all.
The autograph thing notwithstanding, that's all good now.
Oh, you kidding me? Yeah, that'd be front and center now.
That'd be a win. Elijah, think about how much money you could make signing helmets.
Well, did you see that
tattoos.
New Ohio State wide receiver, the incoming freshman Jeremiah Smith? He actually paid for a tattoo. I believe this was 2 weeks ago from a local tattoo shop with a signed jersey. So it's not only fine to do now, it's encouraged.
Jack, how did any barter with your tattoos?
No, nobody wanted anything I had to offer. That was a problem.
What would you get of Nebraska football on your arm or your back? If you had to pick something Nebraska football related tattoo wise, what would you have? You've sat down in Devaney's office before.
I might have Bob pouring a drink.
Okay.
Might have Dr. Tom turning Michigan State down to be head coach twice.
Yes.
So yeah, there've been some interesting games in the short series.
Big time.
One of them was not in 1995. One of them was not in 1996. But I always tell this Nick Saban story. After the first year, and Nebraska beat the Spartans 51-10. It was that summer of '96, and I'm looking for a story. I got to have something. So I wander into the football building, and I see Saban. I says, "Hey, you got a minute?" He says, "What do you want?"
I can hear him saying that to you, too.
I said, "Give me 2 minutes. All I need to know is tell me one thing that's going to be different in year 2. He leans in. He says, "I'll tell you one thing. We're not going to lose to effing Nebraska by 40 points." He's right. They lost by 41. Lost 55-14. So I might have 55-14.
Well, and to be honest, I think the defense put up as many points as the Spartan offense did that day.
I can still see Amon Green just streaking down the field in 95. And, that was Nick's first post-game press conference at Michigan State. He came out and he said, "My guys quit."
No.
That's a great way to start, right? Your guys quit after game one?
I don't think – no, they just got beat by something historically unreal.
Was that the best of the Nebraska teams, the 95 team?
By far, yeah. Yep, you had first, second, third round talent, 3 deep. It was pretty high level. Jack Ebling
and Jack,
us.
I will say a lot of folks around here still consider that not only the best Nebraska team of all time, but the best college football team of all time.
I always tell people that maybe the best Nebraska team was the 97 team, which would have beaten Michigan by 35 or 40 points had they played in a championship game.
They could have done it on the White House lawn.
Yeah.
They were both visiting the same day.
I like to say that just to watch the Michigan fans and the maize come out of their ears. But
and Jack, just by saying that, you get honorary Nebraska citizenship moving forward.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, we'll get you sat down with Junior.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get Junior shipped up to East Lansing so he can bother Izzo.
That'd be great. That would be great. He could be a manager.
Well, he likes his Uncle Jack getting him that autograph, man. That was big time. That was awesome.
I don't know if he could be a walk-on. Steven Izzo's not there now, so there might be a spot for him.
Junior's got a lot of work to do on his 3.
You know what?
Shoots like his
Izzo
dad.
has had more managers come in, and Mark Hollis was one for Judd. Came in as a manager and went on to do great things, and some of them now are NBA coaches.
Love that.
Yeah.
Jack Ebling, catch him on the drive across the state of Michigan. And Jack will have a dinner and a drink tonight, my friend.
You got it. You need it.
Appreciate you.
The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity, powered by Cornhead Lager. The coach with us, Gerry DiNardo, Big Ten Network. Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you, Chris.
It's day one of Big Ten Media Days, Ohio State and a number of other schools. Coach Petiti started things off, and you've seen the Big Ten a long time. You coached in the league as well. And how you feeling with this expansion west?
I think this is the first expansion that's different than all the others that have occurred all around the country. The SEC and the Big Ten have separated themselves from the rest of college football. I think everybody would agree to that. The Big Ten today, or whenever it's official in a couple of weeks, is going to become a conference that is from the East Coast to the West Coast, 18 schools. 45% of our country's population live in Big Ten school area right now. The SEC is kind of landlocked. I don't know that they want to go anywhere. Florida State, they have Florida, Clemson, they have South Carolina, and so it's not only a big day for the Big Ten. I think it's a big day for all of college football. Whereas if the Big Ten is going to separate from the SEC, and they may never. It may be a tie right to the end of the history of college football, or the SEC could get ahead of the Big Ten if that's possible. But this puts the Big Ten in position to do something that isn't available to any other conference in the country.
You mentioned population base, and that is so key. And you've lived in both neighborhoods. You've coached in the SEC. You've coached in the Big Ten. When we talk gap and talent gap, not necessarily with the top heavy teams or the teams that have been in the playoff, but second tier, middle class, how do you see things right now as you look at this league with the SEC and the Big Ten, those teams that are knocking on that door to maybe challenge for a playoff spot?
Well, I think up top they're pretty close. I think each school can expect maybe 3 or 4 to get into the 12-team playoff. The middle and the bottom is probably, because the SEC is only playing 8 games, You know, a lot of the SEC schools have spring football practice, and that's not common in the Big Ten. I don't know that anyone in the Big Ten has it. And so I think their middle to bottom at times are ahead of ahead of the middle and the bottom part of the Big Ten. But again, you know, you've got 18 chances to get in that 12-team playoff over the course of as we go forward. So, again, I think it's one of the reasons, and Commissioner Petitti has really hit on this, late season games that would help a team get into the 12-team playoff, which will eventually become even more than 12 teams. You know, in this conference, you have a better chance to have a more important game later in the season, perhaps, than you do in the SEC. In the SEC, we always had, I don't want to say scrimmage, but we always had the weakest opponent on our schedule the week before we played our rival. Mm-hmm. That's not going to do anything, I don't believe, to help maybe an SEC school that's tied with a Big Ten school going into the last season, and the committee says, you know what, Northwestern or Wisconsin or Minnesota, whoever, just had a big win, mm-hmm. and you know, one of the SEC schools played a 1 AA school.
Gerry DiNardo with us here on Hail Varsity Radio, and you're a guy who's experienced both coaching in the SEC, LSU. You coached in the Big Ten at Indiana. I want to get your thoughts here with these late season games for these West Coast teams, the LA schools, UCLA, USC, even Oregon and Washington. How much of a factor do you think Big Ten weather is going to play as they make the adjustment to the league, going and playing, say, in Wisconsin or in Iowa in late November? What type of impact does that have? Because you've played both down south and in Big Ten country.
I mean, obviously, if the weather's really bad, it's going to impact both teams, and it'll certainly impact the West Coast part of the Big Ten more. You know, honestly, I can't remember the last time we had a lot of really bad weather games towards the end. Maybe I haven't paid much attention to it. And again, you know, it might not be any different than the advantage maybe USC would have to Wisconsin playing the second week in October, where it's 45 to 60 degrees in Madison, and it's still 65 to 75 in LA. So, you know, I think you just deal with these things. It's a great question. I don't know that I have a great answer for it. Let's wait and see. It's certainly something we should think about.
Year 2 for Nebraska, year 2 for Matt Rule, Coach DiNardo, and some expectations to be bowl eligible for Nebraska or beyond. A freshman quarterback, we presume, in Dylan Raiola, and a lot of talent on a really good defense that needs to take that step and be a great defense. Your outlook on the Big Red, you know Nebraska well. You've faced them a lot in your career.
Yeah, I think a fair goal and a fair measure is a bowl game. I really do, and you know, I don't say that lightly, that it's easy. Mm-hmm. You know, I just go back to Baylor and Temple. I mean, those are like impossible jobs, right? And what Matt,
you had one advantage.
What Matt did at those two schools just gives me so much confidence he's going to get it done. Again, I say this all the time. If you've had greatness in college football, if you've had greatness in your past, you can have greatness in your future. Nebraska's testing me on that theory. Okay, they might be the only school that hasn't proved that statement to be true. I can't think of anyone else. So, again, I think a bowl is fair as a goal, and I have all confidence in the world that a guy who turned around Temple and turned around Baylor can turn around Nebraska.
Did you ever start a true freshman quarterback in your career?
I want to say when we were at Colorado, maybe. LSU, Herb Tyler, when Jamie Howard got hurt, and he did great. It wasn't the beginning of the season. Jamie got hurt. I can't remember. And we had a good year that year. And he wound up being one of the most successful quarterbacks in LSU history.
So what went into that being an okay thing, a freshman quarterback taking the reins?
Well, probably support. You know, we had Kevin Falk in the backfield. I mean, we had some really good players around him. We didn't ask him to do too much. He was careful with the ball. He didn't turn it over a lot. But, Chris, it's kind of unfair. The nowadays quarterback has to do so much more than Herb Tyler, as an example. I mean, we had a great supporting cast, but we weren't throwing the ball all that much. And I'd say someone in Riola's position right now, it's much more difficult than what we put Herb Tyler through.
With modern defenses, Coach, what do you see that is going to cause so much difficulty for a freshman quarterback? Because you see it all the time across all of college football whenever freshmen, even redshirt freshmen, get thrown into some tough spots where you see how much they struggle. What about modern defenses with the speed that some of these teams have on the field makes it so difficult?
Well, I'm not of the opinion that it should be all that difficult. First of all, they're year-round players. Second of all, they've grown up with technology. They've watched their high school tablets. They're so much smarter than the previous generations. And ultimately, if the quarterback's confused, that's the coach's fault, not the quarterback's fault. I mean, and what people are doing with formations, literally there's 5 people in the box. Everybody can count. Everybody can look at the second-level player to see if the RPO should be run or thrown. Most high schools are running the same offenses as the colleges are running. And so, I just think the nowadays freshman quarterback is so far ahead of previous generations. I mean, these guys have grown up on their tablets. They've studied the game. How about the camps that they've gone to? And so I'll tell you what, I would have no hesitation to start a freshman quarterback if he was the most talented and had the most top end on the team in quarterbacks.
Couple of teams, once your perspective on with Nebraska's schedule. Colorado, I don't know how much attention you've paid to the Buffs, but the Coach Prime effect, they come to Lincoln for an early season night game in conference. I think there's a lot of stock that Elijah and I might be buying in Rutgers and what Shiano's doing. That is in Lincoln, but a tough ball game. Start with Rutgers and a thought on the Buffs if you want.
I think Rutgers is a tough out. I think they're an old team. Greg is incredibly confident in them. He has great enthusiasm. They've got good players. They don't play Michigan, Ohio State, or Oregon, or USC. I mean, they can be a healthy team, and so I think they're a tough out. Colorado, Nebraska. I think. I haven't followed Colorado much since I've left, or since maybe Gary's left. But the way I look at that game is that I know that I remember the controversy where Bill wanted to make it a rivalry, right? Nebraska, it wasn't really Colorado's rivalry, so let's consider it a rivalry, all right? I don't know how much it is. But whatever level of a rivalry it is, I believe the Nebraska fans are going to appreciate that game a lot more than Colorado fans. Colorado fans tend to come and go. They've been in the Pac-12, this and that. Nebraska fans don't forget. And I think it's part of Nebraska's history that even though it wasn't originally a rival, when they come to Lincoln, it's going to be a rival.
It's going to be an atmosphere, Elijah, and I think that'll rival 2014 when Miami came to town. Some blood in the water.
Yeah, it's a totally cool game.
Yeah,
totally cool game.
And I want to see more of them, but I don't think we're going to see more of these great non-conferences. You've got Colorado this year for Nebraska. It was Oklahoma a couple of years ago. Tennessee's on the docket, future seasons, and I love the fact the Big Ten expanded. You're going to have helmet games every other week, or you could, but I want to see some of these non-conference games still exist, and I don't know that it will.
Well, Chris, the only reason to play a tough non-conference game nowadays is money, and the last thing that a Big Ten team needs is more money. I mean, if you're at a place that doesn't have Nebraska's tradition, doesn't have Nebraska's potential, if you're I don't know, the bottom half of a conference, and you're not filling your stadium, and you're playing 9 conference games, you have to play a good opponent to help fill your stadium. Even though at the end of this contract, every Big Ten school is going to get $100 million per school when this TV contract is done. So we're talking about billions of dollars, but still. Title IX, we've got to have equal number of opportunities for our daughters like we do for our sons, and that's the right thing to do. And there's still people that are struggling financially. But if you're not struggling financially, every coach wants 3 wins.
Yeah, amen.
It's Gerry DiNardo with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Gerry, before we get you out, I want you to give us your Big Ten outlook. It's a conversation we had last week on this show. Is it a 2-horse race in the Big Ten between Ohio State and Oregon, or do you think any other teams get involved? Could it be a 4-horse race with Penn State and Michigan as well? What's your take on the top end of the Big Ten this year?
Yeah, I think you start with 2. I'm not sure 3 and 4 will be Michigan and Penn State. They're probably going to be the most talented. Now, we haven't been to camp yet, so I don't really know. There's probably some other teams that could challenge for 3 or 4, but it certainly looks like when we go to Ohio State in a couple of weeks, which will be the 18th time we've gone to their camp, that we may see the most talented team that they've ever had, and that's saying something. Oregon, I'm so curious to get out there. I coached out there when I was at Indiana, and we competed against them in recruiting at Colorado. Penn State, 6th offensive coordinator since James has been there, 3rd defensive coordinator since he's been there. And some of those guys have left on both sides for head coaching jobs. So Penn State's always a hard one to figure out. Sharon Moore, first-time head coach. I think his experience last year with the suspended Jim Harbaugh will really help him be a first-year head coach. But I think we got the first 2 right. I'm not sure we got 3 and 4 right.
Wisconsin.
Yeah, Wisconsin, year 2 Fickle. First year at Cincinnati, he won 4. Second year in Cincinnati, he won 11. This is his second go-around. We've got some first-year coaches here. First-year guys going into their second year. You got David Bryan, you got Ryan Walters, but Fick's in a little different situation. Second year as the head coach of Wisconsin, but he's already been to the playoffs and been at Cincinnati.
Best dish you had in Italy this summer?
Probably the bolognese sauce, which I've tried to duplicate at home. I'm going to keep trying. I will say this disappointment part was, and I've been there before, but I paid more attention to it this time. I still say New York pizza is better than Italian pizza, no matter where you buy it in Italy.
Well, there's a pizza spot for you to stop in Lincoln.
Okay, I'll do it.
There's Coach DiNardo. Elijah Herbel, Hail Varsity continues from Big Ten Media Days.
That's Gerry DiNardo with us on a day 1 of Big Ten Media Days as Elijah Herbel takes you through hour 2 of the show here. We'll try to get caught up with Gerry DiNardo once again once he rolls back through Lincoln as a part of that preseason camp tour that BTN does every single year. It used to be on the bus. I'm not sure. Can it be on the bus again this year? It's a question we probably should ask to Gerry with all those West Coast teams. It turns into a hell of a road trip, and I'm not anti going to West Coast. I floated the idea out there. Schmidt shot it down of taking the RV out to L.A. for the Nebraska-USC game, so it's doable, but I don't know if they're going to be on the bus this year or not. Regardless, we hope to get caught up with Gerry once again once he stops back through Lincoln and catches one of Nebraska's fall camp practices. So big thanks to Gerry DiNardo for sitting down with us on day 1 of Big Ten Media Days as Chris Schmidt and myself put in some long hours the next couple of days, bringing you content today and tomorrow, as tomorrow Nebraska takes the stage. Matt Rule, Isaac Gifford, Ty Robinson, as well as Ben Scott, all going to be available for us. Before we get there, though, we'll get caught up with longtime Ohio State writer Tim May. He joins us after the break here on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back into it. Hail Varsity continues from Lucas Oil Stadium. Big Ten Media Days. Tim May with us. You find Tim on Twitter at Tim_May Sports 11. I should say Letterman Row. And Tim, it is awesome to talk with you. We talk whenever it's Nebraska, Ohio State. I want to talk more football with you, but let's talk golf cart war stories real quick. And the time there was chicken on the golf course.
Yeah.
Game of chicken.
Yeah. It was like in between. In 1986, Bobby Rahal qualified 4th, I think, for Indianapolis 500. His owner, Jim Truman, was just weeks away from dying from cancer. And lo and behold, that Indianapolis 500 got rained out after a couple of days. So they rescheduled it for a Saturday. And, of course, he was from Columbus, Ohio area, just like I was. So I went back and playing golf with him and two buddies. And one buddy was driving one golf cart, and my buddy was driving the other golf cart. And all of a sudden, it turned into a game of chicken. And I don't think my guy chickened, is the way I remember it correctly, because we kept going straight. And the other guy chickened, and he turned, and luckily he was driving because he turned and in essence, exposed the driver's side of the golf cart, and we hit the golf cart. I wouldn't say we weren't going more than 5 miles an hour, but that's still pretty hard in a golf cart. I think it was before NHTSA, before National Highway Transportation Safety Association, which I think is, don't they have an HQ in Nebraska somewhere? I'm trying to remember.
If they don't, they will.
I know that's where the safer barrier that's around all these big time racetracks they helped develop it. But bottom line is Bobby Rahal was uninjured, but I told him what he was missing from then on in Indy 500 was having a wreck just before the Indy 500 to give him that little good luck charm. And so that was not a really great story, except for the fact that 3 days later, did go on to win the Indianapolis 500 for the first and only time.
That is gold. Tim May with us here. Tim, we'll get your take on Nebraska here in a moment, but let's talk expectations, pressure, Ryan Day, and the Buckeyes payroll. All those things mean what for 2024? What's your outlook? I know where they're picked. Can the team deliver?
It's a modern era is what it means when it comes to NIL. You're either NIL or you're catching up. And so that's where that means. And Ohio State, depending on where you look, Ohio State is just in the running for one of the higher NIL payrolls, not necessarily the highest one. So that's all up to conjecture because they don't so far they're not posting that on any kind of like clearinghouse source where you get to see what guys are making.
It's not there's no books to look at yet.
No, but this is a moment in time for Ohio State football where they got all of the major principals, almost all who mattered, to return. They decided to return for another season, including JT Tuimoloau, Jack Sawyer, Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver, cornerback Denzel Burke, right on down the line. Those guys all decided, basically with 3 losses to Michigan on their resume, no Big Ten championship game appearance. That's not the way they wanted to go out. And then you mix that back in with the guys who were returning across the offensive line, right, including Donovan Jackson. He's another guy who decided to return, a left guard, big-time player. And then you mix in the guys they got from the transfer portal, led by Caleb Downs, the highly regarded safety out of Alabama. Seth McLaughlin started the last 2 years at center for Alabama. A guy named Will Howard, who's from y'all's neck of the woods, sort of, right? Kansas,
right?
Kansas is y'all's neck of the woods, isn't it?
It is. It's
a big woods. It's in a big sky. It's big woods.
2 hours south.
Big plains. But anyway,
good quarterback. But you've got a really good quarterback room.
Yeah. Well, you mix that in with Devin Brown, who's only started one game at Ohio State and got knocked out of that early in the second quarter against in the Cotton Bowl against Missouri. I guess what I'm saying is you mix in all of that and you mix in a brand new offensive coordinator. Or excuse me, I left out Quinshon Judkins, transfer running back from Ole Miss. Are you kidding me? He's rushed for over 1,000 yards the last 2 years. Decided to transfer to Ohio State, where he's now matched up with Travion Henderson in that backfield.
I love that guy.
And a couple of freshmen, James Peoples and Sam Williams-Dixon, who are extremely talented. And then you mix in the fact that they've got Chip Kelly now as the offensive coordinator, former head coach at UCLA, former original offensive coordinator for Ryan Day when Ryan Day was a quarterback at the University of New Hampshire, and then Ryan Day worked for him in the NFL at a couple of stops. Ryan Day now becomes a true head coach this season for the first time. Just the mix in this era where guys come and go. This is about as good a mix as you're ever going to get in a one-season spot, and that's what it's all about now. You know that, man. put together a team for this year, recruit like the Dickens for next year and the year after, but take care of this year first. And that's what the transfer portal gives you. Like Brett Bielema, I hear at the Big Ten meetings, he was talking about embracing that because treat it as a good time. It's here to stay. Pretty soon these guys are going to be sharing revenue in one more season. So embrace it for what it is. Go out and try to put the best team together possible.
Tim, you laid out the wealth of riches that Ohio State has at their disposal this year. I'd call it a disgusting amount of wealth, and I mean that in the best way possible whenever I say disgusting. It is fantastic for Ohio State just how much talent they have. And whenever you look at the Big Ten and you look at the talent that you have on the roster, it really does feel like Ohio State and Oregon in terms of the talent they have and everybody else. And I'm going to get your thoughts. What is that talent gap between the top two teams in the conference, Oregon and Ohio State, and those other teams trying to challenge them, your Michigans, your Penn States, your Iowas of the world?
Yeah, well, here's the way I've been, Elijah. This is the way I've been explaining it. When I say this is as talented a roster from top to bottom I've ever covered at Ohio State, I mean from top to bottom. Have I covered better players at every position? Absolutely. I mean, Orlando Pace is still the best offensive lineman I've ever seen in college football. Chris Carter, just had him on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, the Tim May Show, talking about the players, then and now, but he agrees from a roster standpoint, it's about as deep as you can get. They at quarterback position, they don't have a quarterback who, in my opinion, at the moment, comes anywhere close to C.J. Stroud or Justin Fields. But they've got talented quarterbacks, and I'm talking about Will Howard and Devin Brown, and then the freshman who also transferred from Alabama after being there for 2 weeks, Julian Sayin, in some places was considered the top quarterback prospect in the country last year. And then you look at the wide receiver core. I left out this guy's name. I can't believe it. Maybe it's because I've said it so much. Is Jeremiah Smith. As Chris Carter said, he expects Jeremiah Smith, freshman, to contribute maybe first play, but first day. Forget about waiting his turn like even Chris Carter had to do back in the mid-'80s. Jeremiah Smith is good on the hoof-looking wide receivers you've ever seen come into Ohio State. And that's saying a lot. But yeah, it's just the depth, and depth is what's going to carry you. Because, fellas, Ohio State's looking at, and Ryan Day will tell you, you're looking at a minimum 16-game season this year if things go anywhere close to where they want them to go, which means possibly playing for a Big Ten championship and then playing minimum three games in the college football playoff. We're talking about if you don't win that Big Ten championship game, possibly including that game, possibly playing 5 of the toughest games you've ever played in a row. And so you got to have a roster that reflects the challenge that's coming.
Tim May's with us, Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Cornhead Lager. We're here at Big Ten Media Days, right around the 25-yard line, we'll say red zone area here at Lucas Oil Stadium. You can find Tim and follow him as he is all over Ohio State at Tim_May Sports. Letterman Row is where you read him. The Tim May Show, that podcast, check it out. When we talk about Nebraska, the Big Red are headed to Columbus. It's not gone well in Columbus for Nebraska, or a lot of teams, quite honestly, end of October. What's your outlook with Rule, with Nebraska, and a name you guys know that was committed for a little bit to Ohio State and Dylan Raiola?
Well, number one, I think I said on your show last year, I like Matt Rule. I mean, not as maybe a NFL coach, but NFL coach is being in the right place at the right time, with the right GM and everything else, and it all coming together. You saw what he did at Temple. You saw what he did at Baylor. There was no mirage at Baylor. That was a big-time college football team. Then all these guys have that itch, I think, to go to the NFL and prove themselves on the ultimate level of football. That's why they got into football. With that said, I think he's in the right place at the right time for Nebraska fans, because this guy, you do believe, is going to build a stout program. I think they're still in the building stage, without a doubt. I was going to say early stages, but really stages come and go so fast in major college football anymore. That's not the right analogy, but they're definitely building stage. But yeah, getting Dylan Raiola, who committed to Ohio State, and then committed to Georgia. And then I think he committed to run for the Republican nomination for president, but then got out of that race early.
He might win in Nebraska.
Yeah, and then committed to Nebraska. No, I mean he committed to a lot of things, but finally Nebraska was the one that got him to sign on the dotted line. Or is that line, by the way, is that dotted or just a solid line?
You know what? I think it's a solid line, but depending on how much ink is in your fax machine, it could turn.
Yes, it could turn dotted. But the bottom line is, I mean, got to know him a little bit when he was committed to Ohio State and everybody around him, and big time talent, freshman quarterbacks. It's hard to win in major college football with all the shenanigans that major college defenses throw at you anymore, et cetera. And then you've got to have the surrounding cast. I like the cast that Matt Rule and his staff are basically putting together. Did they have as ultimate a success on the transfer portal as like an Ohio State did this year? Because Ohio State pretty much picked and chose and got exactly the pieces they needed from a depth standpoint. I'm not sure Nebraska did that. I mean, they have some good players, don't get me wrong. But definitely, I think Matt Rule has embraced the idea of the modern college football. See, you gripe about it like Nick Saban used to do, and then you figure out a way how to use the new stuff and kick everybody's butt with it. I think Matt Rule is that kind of guy.
He's adapt or die, right? And
yes.
You do so.
By the way, I don't know if it comes across. I really like Matt Rule.
No, I know you do. I mean, there's high-level respect there. I think there's peers in this league that really respect Rule. I think it's fascinating, the Chip Kelly story with what he's done and how good he is, to just look at what's going to make me happy, calling plays, and do it in a spot that there's absolutely pressure, but there's also some comfort because of the relationship.
Yeah. And then you wonder, okay, I meant to talk about this a while ago. Nebraska, I think Nebraska falls in a great spot on Ohio State's schedule. I'm talking about for Nebraska.
Yeah, because
from the standpoint of looking behind, looking ahead. I mean, the first weekend in November, Ohio State goes to Penn State.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to write off every game. And the fans, et cetera, wants to write off every game on Ohio State's schedule except the trip to Oregon, the trip to Penn State, and hosting Michigan the last weekend of November. And that's folly in the modern college football world. That's folly. A lot of teams can beat each other on any given Saturday. But what was your question? I'm trying to remember.
Just Chip Kelly.
Yeah, Chip Kelly.
And what he'll bring to it and the comfort.
Everything's all hunky dory right now and stuff because
undefeated.
They're undefeated. It's old buddies back together again.
Butch and Sundance.
Almost like uncle and nephew when it comes to Chip Kelly and Ryan Day. Except Ryan Day's now the boss. Number one. Number two. There's no way that two intelligent people sit together in a room or in a meeting and occasionally don't differ on their opinions. And so that'll be interesting, especially maybe some things that Chip Kelly wants to do or tries to do don't exactly go according to Hoyle. What's that relationship going to be like then? The old relationship was Chip Kelly would probably say, well, we're going to do it my way. Now it's going to be Ryan Day sitting in, and Ryan Day's going to be involved in coaching the quarterbacks, and to some respect he has to because he's an expert at that. But Chip Kelly is the quarterback coach, so we'll see how all that plays out. But they've got enough talent on hand to pretty much put together almost any kind of sports car you want to put together at Ohio State this year. I don't think that's hyperbole. I think that is accurate. So now we'll see which direction the sports car goes. With Chip Kelly, there's going to be a lot more reliance on the tires, meaning the running game.
Sure.
He loves the running game. He's a genius. You think about offensive genius anymore, somebody who has these really wild offensive passing plays, et cetera, passing schemes. But Chip Kelly is a genius at the run game. As much as he is the pass game. And that's where Ohio State really needs to step up compared to recent years.
Tim May's with us here.
From a consistency standpoint.
I totally agree with you. Elijah, jump in, bud.
I wanted to get into the importance of that Michigan game at the end of the year here whenever we talk about Ohio State.
What game?
the Saturday game to end the season to leave the opponent out. I'll just ask the question here. There's been a lot of outside noise regarding that game. Do you think the Ohio State
outside noise,
inside noise as well?
I'm sorry, Elijah. I forgot where you live, man.
It's all good. It's just the question, simply put. How much weight do you think that game has this year? Is it any extra with the noise that surrounds the 3-game losing streak?
Yeah, because it's a 3-game losing streak for Ohio State. I mean, that's huge noise. You hear it every day. It kind of whistles through the windows, even though you got airtight windows. When you're covering the team or around the team, you're covering the team. Everybody wants to know, number one, who the starting quarterback is, and do they have the team to beat Michigan this year? Boy, it's funny how things switch. Flip-flop in a heartbeat in college football, and I've always said it's these kind of runs that make a rivalry special. Is when it takes a while, all of a sudden you're on the wrong end of that stick, which Ohio State was under John Cooper, 2-10-1, and all of a sudden they lost just 2 games in the first 20 years of the new century, and then all of a sudden you've seen what's happened the last 3 years. But a lot of things have changed on both sides of that rivalry. And number two, it's a new era in terms of the college football playoff. A loss to Michigan doesn't necessarily end your season like it used to from the standpoint of major goals. And so I think people are going to have a tough time coming to grips. Maybe older folks are going to have a tough time coming to grips with just losing to Michigan doesn't mean your season's lost. It means you just lost to Michigan, or vice versa. Michigan lost to Ohio State, but you can still make the 12-team new major college playoff. So, yeah, there's a lot of noise going on. Just ask Ryan Day. I'm sure he gets asked about it every day. I get asked about it every day. If I'm shopping, if I'm playing golf, whatever.
Tim, what do you think?
What do you think? Are they going to be good enough this year?
Can they get them?
You have no idea until they play the game. And then number two, the only reason the past matters is the one thing you can refer to, but it has little to do with this year, except in terms of maybe one team being tight and one team maybe being a little too taking things for granted. I think last year for sure the better team won the game, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. So is Ohio State the better team this year? On paper, it looks like Ohio State is, so we'll see how it goes.
Tim Mays with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Letterman Row, Tim_Mays Sports on Twitter. The Tim Mays Show podcast, get it downloaded. Tim will get you out on this, and it's fun to spend time with you, and we'll be in Columbus this year for Nebraska and Ohio State, some road shows. I want to buy you something.
The stadium ought to be all red.
That tastes good. Yes, it will. Yes, it will. A little silver in there.
It's like Indiana when Ohio State plays. Used to every other year when Ohio State would play at Indiana, that's when Indiana would take their stadium picture, their aerial stadium picture, because it was full and it was red.
Used to be like that in Lawrence, too.
Yeah.
For Nebraska.
Yeah.
Big 12, Big 10 overall, you have the additions, you have 18. Minimum consistency is what for playoff with the Big Ten? Is it 3 a year? Is it 4? What do you think? I know it can fluctuate, but what's the baseline?
Well, here's you could see the team that doesn't get to play in the Big Ten championship game, but is maybe 2 losses.
Yeah,
still making the playoff. Everybody thinks the SEC is going to get automatically 4 teams in. I don't necessarily agree with that. But then again, when you start looking at the top 12 across the nation,
it's going to be SEC Big Ten.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to be beating their chest, deserving. Does the Big 12, the new look Big 12, which I think is sneakily kind of interesting league, should it get 2 in? Should the ACC get 2 in with the way it seems to be falling apart like a helicopter where a bolt came loose?
Fire drill, man.
Yeah. But, yeah, I think the Big Ten, there's a good chance the Big Ten gets 3 in, I think, just based on Penn State, how good Penn State looks like it's going to be, how good Michigan could be at the end of the year, maybe not the beginning from an offensive standpoint, but at the end of the year they could be pretty good. Who knows? See, what I never understood about the Big Ten was why anybody in the Big Ten West voted to go to top 2 teams. I don't understand.
Stay
I would
in the
like
West
to see
and
that.
Get your free pass here.
I would like to see that vote count, or if there was even a vote about it. But because let's say if things go according to Hoyle, Ohio State goes to Oregon, gets beat by Oregon, but then runs the table, or vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Ohio State goes to Oregon, wins, and Oregon runs the table otherwise. They would play here in this stadium, Lucas Oil Stadium, for the Big Ten Championship the first weekend in December. And the funny thing about that is the team with one loss could knock off that other team.
Sure.
So then that other team gets the bye. And the team with one loss goes into that 5 through 12 pool, along with probably another Big Ten team. And then, two sessions into the playoff, because I would think if the team that's undefeated falls into the pool, it would probably fall into number 5 or number 6, which means they wouldn't necessarily they would fall into playing the first week of the playoffs. But then you could end up facing each other. You could be 4 versus 5 the second week of the playoffs, the quarterfinals, and it could be Oregon, Ohio State again.
You see them 3 times a year, possibly.
No, 3 times but 2 times in 4 weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how I think screwy the playoff situation could be. But as a former Ohio State coach, the late Earl Bruce used to say, that's water under the dam. We got to see that water go under the dam, which isn't funny anymore considering the dam failures that are going on around the world. But it was funny back when he said it because he meant water under the bridge.
Tim Mays with us. Tim, it is always good to run you down, spend some time talking college
I've
football.
lost a step or two. That's why you're able to do it.
No, well, even in my boot, man, I appreciate it. I appreciate you letting us run you down, and we'll check in again, Tim. Appreciate you.
Oh, yeah, man. I've seen so many people walk around with a boot on. I got to get me one of those. They look comfortable.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time here on a Tuesday. It's Elijah Herbel taking you through the final few minutes of this show. Day 1 of Big Ten Media Days out at Lucas Oil Stadium in Indianapolis. It's been a full day of sitting down and chatting with some of the biggest and best sports writers from across the Big Ten today. Tomorrow, though, going to sit down with a few more players and coaches on the docket tomorrow. Hoping for a sit down with the head man himself, Coach Matt Rule. So Matt Rule and the Husker contingent going to be in Indianapolis tomorrow. I believe they're already there right now. So hoping to get a sit down with the head man as well as with Ben Scott, Ty Robinson, and Isaac Gifford. Those are the 3 players that are going to be in attendance for Nebraska. We'll also hear our sit-downs from earlier today, as we decided they'd be a little bit more timely and fitting tomorrow. Scott Docterman, he's the beat writer for the University of Iowa for The Athletic. Scott, one of the most knowledgeable writers in the Big Ten, covers the area really well. He sat down with us a few hours ago, and we decided with Iowa and Nebraska both taking the podium and taking center stage tomorrow, it'd be best if we heard from Scott tomorrow, so we kept that one in the back pocket for tomorrow, as well as our sit down with Bruce Feldman. You see him on Fox. You also see his work with The Athletic as well. So Bruce and Scott Docterman both going to be with us tomorrow. The Husker contingent is going to be there, and whoever else we see. We've been hoping maybe catch Joel Klatt if he somehow makes the mistake of sitting down with Chris Schmidt and myself. So a lot of people out there in Indianapolis, a lot of faces to see, a lot of handshakes for one Chris Schmidt this weekend. So we'll see who we see. But before we get out of here, I do want to go back to our topic we led this show off with in discussing the villains of the Big Ten, because Jim Harbaugh leaving the Big Ten, we all remember the fiasco last year with Connor Stalions. Even before that, I think you'd put Harbaugh near the top of the list of villains of the Big Ten just because of the way he operated. I mean, he had that Michigan program rolling, had essentially no regard for human life and how that Michigan team played, just his kind of lifeless nature as a head football coach. Like, you never really saw the personality behind Harbaugh. It was always just the football coach. Like, I remember how shocking it was last year at Big Ten Media Days whenever we learned his favorite musical artist was Alanis Morissette, because it just brought a level of humanity that you didn't expect with the villain of the Big Ten. Anyway, I digress. The Stallion situation happens, and it really, if he wasn't already in your mind, promoted Jim Harbaugh to the number 1 villain in the Big Ten. He's gone now. Who fills that void as being the next villain of the Big Ten? Schmidt thinks it could still be Michigan with Sharon Moore. They still have a lot of talent up there in Ann Arbor. Michigan could continue to be your villain. I subscribe to the notion that it's going to be Oregon with Dan Lanning. He's a hard-nosed football coach that really doesn't care what you think about him. And plus, you have the Nike Phil Knight money that's going to be funding that Oregon football program. I think they're going to be the big bad kid on the block for the next couple of years in the Big Ten, because I think Dan Lanning is in a prime position to have that Oregon team come in and be one of the players in the Big Ten every single year. That's a candidate. Dare I say Lincoln Riley and USC potentially? I know they've been a bit of a punching bag with how their defense is played, but for as explosive and high-powered as their offense is, and as well as they recruit on the offensive side of the ball, you have that kind of LA glitz and glam nature. Could USC and Lincoln Riley be a villain in the Big Ten? And let me pose one more to you. Could Matt Rule in Nebraska be a villain in the Big Ten? I don't think Matt Rule's nature, I think he's too affable to be the villain, but Jim Harbaugh was also affable in his own way at Michigan, yet he still ended up being the villain. I don't know, there's some candidates. All I know is somebody has to fill that void. I promote to you Dan Lanning and Oregon being the next villain of the Big Ten. That'll do it for us here on a Tuesday, though. We'll be back tomorrow from 4 to 6 with more content. Schmitty at Big Ten Media Days. We'll talk to you from 4 to 6 tomorrow with Hail Varsity Radio.